Hey, Tim, are you here for roll call?
Oh, yeah, you got sound problems, buddy.
Oh, sounds
Yeah,
like
that's.
R2D2.
We will interpret that interesting sound that Tim just made as yes, he's attending via teleconference from Holland, Michigan. And I think that those are the members that I see, Mr. Chair, and I will turn it back to you.
Did I miss you saying PJ?
Oh, PJ, did I get you? I'm sorry, PJ. Hi, PJ.
Where is he?
He's
I
frozen.
see a picture of him.
I am very sorry. I'm trying to do two things at once. I am here via teleconference from Holland, Michigan.
All right. Sorry for forgetting you, PJ.
Nope.
All right, Mr. Chair, there you go.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Keith. All right, we'll jump right in. We have meeting minutes from last time, which was March 29th, to move and approve. Can I have a motion to review those? Don't all jump up at once.
That's usually Tim's job. I move we approve the minutes from March 29th, 2021.
Thanks, Nikki. Do I have a second?
Second that.
Thank you, Boyd. Any discussion? Going once. All right, all in favor of approving the minutes as written from March 29th, say aye or raise your hand or two thumbs up or make a vacuum noise like Tim.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, great. Public comment time. We've got some guests here of a variety. It looks like, would anyone like to share with us today? I see Laura hand, Laura Judge.
Okay to go?
Yes, you have the floor.
All right, yep, Laura Judge, 6510 Oakwood Lane, Holland, 49423. Just real quick, a long view comment, just please keep considering recommending a more aggressive emission goal with target years to council in your final recommendation. And this is more a short-term comment, in one of a statewide, I don't know, meeting that I was attending, they were touting the Lansing Board of Water and Light had the kind of the Cadillac plan statewide of municipal utilities as far as rebates for residential and businesses installing solar. And so I think they go up to $2,000 rebate, and they have a real nice write-up on their website. So might just be something to look at to try to emulate or maybe try to even better them. So thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Anyone else? Shanley, welcome back.
Thanks so much. It's good to be back. I just wanted to touch base with you guys again about the importance of the work that you're doing. You guys are tasked with creating strategies, which I know can be a pretty tedious task, but over the past few weeks, I've sensed some rising momentum and spirit in your work. So I really appreciate that and just wanted to put it in the context of why it matters. More recently, climate scientists have been telling us that the actions we take in the next 10 years specifically are critical. Scientists say that the effects of our actions, if we aren't acting progressively, will in a lot of ways be irreversible. And that includes if we act too slowly too. Some consequences of that could be that we could lose thousands of species that can't survive effects of a 2 degrees Celsius increase in temperature. Entire communities could be lost on coastlines, and polar vortexes and extreme storms will continue to threaten our communities. So it's really a life or death matter, and not just for lives of citizens of Holland, but more specifically climate refugees all across America, climate refugees on coastlines swallowed by forest fires and rising water, climate scientists in the flood zones of Nebraska, Kansas, the Dakotas, climate refugees displaced from cities such as Phoenix, which this fact was staggering to me, but last year they spent over 6 months at 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which poses a lot of health risks, especially to elderly populations. So just a reminder that carbon emissions don't know county lines, they don't know state lines. We already have 1.2 million Americans that have been displaced from their homes and now bear that title climate refugee. And those numbers are just gonna keep rising at frightening rates if we don't act aggressively. So just returning with that message that the clock is ticking, and you guys are doing the important work. We need that new aggressive plan from you guys, one that brings us to carbon neutral by 2050 and cuts carbon emissions by 50% by 2030. So thank you for bearing this during one of the most crucial times for our environment. And yeah, thank you for continuing to take care of Holland. That's all I got for you guys.
Thanks, Shanley. Would anyone else like to share? I will leave another second in case someone thinks they're on mute. Okay. All right. Great. Well, appreciate those comments as always. Keep them coming. And we have to acknowledge the online public comments. So I would need a motion to acknowledge them, and then we can discuss after that. Any?
So moved.
Thank you, Jeff.
Uh,
Any seconds? Did I miss that?
I'll second.
Thanks, Boyd. All right, any comments or noteworthy items about the batch of online submitted comments to council or us these past few weeks? All right, all in favor of putting them as part of the meeting record that we saw them and acknowledge them, say aye.
Aye.
I
Any
guess I
opposed?
just have, sorry, I didn't jump in early enough. I have one comment that, on some of the attached public comments. So there was the one specifically to council from the Holland Climate Collaborative, which appeared to say that we had said that we weren't going to be considering the overall goal. And I guess the comment that I have is that, to me at least, who I've been sitting here for a while, it doesn't seem like that's ever been off the table, just that hasn't been put on the table yet. So I guess that, I don't know, maybe is that kind of in line with what everybody else on the SDT is kind of sitting in? I know we've talked about it at different times, but it doesn't seem like we haven't ever had a real discussion about what the goal should be. But to me, that doesn't seem like that's going to be because we're not going to have that discussion.
Yeah, Jeff, that's my take. Others might have different takes, but I feel like a number of times we've said it's important that we get to talking about it, but we're going to do it after we've heard about all the other levers and all the other things that have been going on. So I would agree with your assessment.
I just feel like it's important to have that, I don't know, maybe be a little bit more clear as to how we're working through this, not that we're not listening to to some of those things that are said.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. Keith, I see a hand.
Yeah, not because I tried to make a statement, Jeff, and just so you're aware, I made a statement at council meeting last week when this was read into the record during public comment, not because it was about anything about the city manager, but I had checked with Brian and Travis and then with 2 council members that are on this, and just wanted to clarify for the record along the lines of what you said, both that Dave or I have never said don't talk about a goal to this group because that's part of the overall charge. And then I just communicated that you guys by consensus had a discussion early on that you wanted to do your investigation before you had the discussions about goals. So just like kind of you clarified that at this meeting, Jeff, I tried to do the same thing at the council meeting. So that's the only statement I'd have about that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nuanced. I think, there's a few different things happening, right? Like the SDT was set in motion 10 years ago to review strategic goals every 3 to 5 years. So that was put in motion a long time ago, and that's technically what we're doing right now. But all of the new climate science came out in between the previous one of these and this one, and thus the emphasis on addressing the overall goal. And I think we've attempted, or at least the world that I'm living in, which is in my garage by myself, is that we're definitely wanting to make sure that we do our primary charge, which is what are the 3 to 5 year priorities off of the CEP. And then along the way of doing that, we'll have gathered enough information to be able to intelligently, as a committee, talk about if the overall goal should be also included as part of our recommendation. But to have not gone through the process of our main charge, which is there's an existing plan, an existing goal, and our job is to look at what's important for the next 3 to 5 years. We got to do that. We have to do that. That's our, that's the plan that got put in place 10 years ago that we have to do. And it's convenient that we'll also be gathering all the necessary information to look at the overall goal at the same time, I think, as the 3 to 5 year. So that's the world that I've been living in. And I feel like we've been talking about it, but maybe not quite that explicitly. So anyways, I'm happy to be pushed back on. I am just sitting here in my garage all by myself. So maybe other people have been having a different experience in their, offices or garages or whatnot.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this a lot, Brian. The only thing that I just like to say, just because, again, clarification and good information, the last time you kind of said the SDT 10 years ago, and the last time the SDT met, and in fact, the last time council approved SDT goals similar to what you're going to send to them, Dave, give me a year, but I think it was the year right before I became city manager, which is 3 years ago. So I think the
SDT met in
SDT
2017 and then presented goals for the next 3 to 5 years in February of 2018.
So just to clarify for everyone, it's not
Yeah.
10 years ago. It's just 2018 that those goals were adopted by council, similar to the process that you guys are going through now.
Yeah, sorry, that was sloppy on my end. I think the SDT, the idea of it was put in place at the outset of the CEP, which was approximately 10 years ago, not the last time that it actually met. So good catch there, Jeff. I was gonna give you a little friction for, not letting us finish the vote, but that was worth it. Okay, so now all in favor of the public comments online submitted and acknowledged, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Now I lost my place. Okay, so we are jumping into commercial and institutional building stock, that lever. And we started on that path a little bit last time, and we're picking it back up with a few different things today. And a friendly reminder, the non-residential built environment as part of our overall pie is upwards of 70% of the existing carbon emission footprint in town. So this is really important stuff as it relates to everything we're talking about. So Dave or Keith, I'm not even sure who's going to tee up the PACE conversation here.
Real quickly, I'm just going to turn it over to Ted Seiler and Amy Yost, primarily Ted, actually. Tim, if you could hit the mute button on your computer.
All right.
And then we'll hear you through the phone.
All
you
right.
go. Yeah, that sounds better. Thank you. Okay, good. Now, just wanted to, again, thank Ted and Amy for helping to put together this topic for our discussion this afternoon. And I'll let them introduce our guests who are here, and appreciate the time that they're giving to help us understand the topic of PACE financing. So Ted, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm going to thank Becky Heidinga from Ottawa County. We learned that they were looking at a PACE financing option for the county, and we thought, hey, that is something that we've been talking about here and even previous to the formation of the SDT. We had a call with Becky, and she gave us some good information, and she willingly agreed. Well, I don't know if it was willingly or not, but she agreed to come to this meeting and maybe give some background. And I see some representatives from Lean Green, Michigan, as well as Ottawa Ingham and Eaton County that have put this in place and used it. And so, Becky, I would hand it off to you, and maybe you can introduce those that have come to talk to us about PACE financing.
Sure. Thank you, Ted. Appreciate it. Appreciate you guys giving us a little bit of time on your agenda. So just a little bit of context to go with that introduction. Actually have to give the credit to Amanda Murray on connecting with Holland BPW. We had a talk with a project that came before us via Holland Township. They had a development project that was interested in utilizing PACE. Holland Township punted that to the county, thinking that might make some more sense. So we had a discussion about that project, got to talking about PACE in the county, and Amanda is kind of part of the due diligence process, thought it would make sense to reach out to BPW, which we thought was great. So that brought us to the conversation with Ted and Amy. And I understood from them that this has been something that your group has discussed in the past. So I thought it would be a good learning opportunity for everybody to get together. So Elise is here with us, Elise Matz from Lean Green, Michigan. She's the government relations contact that we've been visiting with, and she is the woman with the information and the details. And I am not. I am the woman with the limited amount of information and the ability to introduce those who do know things. So Elise is going to be leading this charge here in a minute. And what we thought might be really beneficial for, the county as we entertain potentially adopting PACE and everyone else that's in attendance is having some guests from some communities that have gone through a number of projects, those who have done it and done it this way with Lean and Green also. So we've got some guests from Ingham and Eaton County. You have Eric, who, and I'm not going to do your last name, Schertzing. I don't know if I'm close, but welcome, Eric. And then we also have Bob from Eaton, Bob Robinson, who agreed to sit in and just kind of give us their experiences. And I'm going to let Elise kind of include them wherever it fits into what you're going to do there, Elise. So unless anybody has any questions for the county, how the project came to us, anything like that right now for me, you can unmute and ask me now, or I'll just kick it over to Elise and let her do a quick presentation, get some input from Eric and Bob, and then we can open it up to questions from all. So thank you very much. Elise, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, and thanks to the Board of Public Works for putting us on their agenda today. And I also want to give yet another thanks to Eric and Bob for joining us. Very kind of them. They have day jobs, but they moonlight for us as spokespeople for PACE, and they don't have to do it, but they believe in this program, and we're always really happy that they're willing to go out and talk to others about how it's been a fit for their economic development goals in their jurisdiction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to go ahead and present online today. Let's see how this works out. There we go. There we go. So I'm just going to go ahead and blow through this as quickly as possible so that we have plenty of time to hear from Bob and Eric and take questions. So this is our team. You're looking at half of us today. I also was remiss in not introducing Aaron Patterson, who joined me here at the last minute. He's our associate counsel. Speaking of people with the details, he really gets down into the nitty gritty of working with the pay statute and helping our local jurisdictions stay compliant. We also have Todd Williams at the helm as our president and general counsel, and Christian Cope as our intrepid external affairs manager. So just a really quick agenda. I'm going to talk about sort of the value proposition of PACE, how we work sort of at the nexus of all the different parties involved. Talk to you about some market data to show what we've been doing in Michigan, and then run through some case studies. So why PACE? So I think this is really appropriate for this group as you're sort of grappling with how do we actually reach these decarbonization goals. We know that efficiency has a lot of promise for reducing carbon emissions, and that almost 40% of energy accounts, sorry, 40% of emissions come from constructing and operating buildings, but that a lot of that energy is wasted. And then we also know that we are seeing a global boom as population increases and places develop. We expect building stock to double in area. So obviously there's a big incentive to make buildings more efficient. But the problem at an individual level is that these projects can be really expensive for the individuals who are considering efficiency measures. And so traditional financing tools might require a 3 to 5 year payback horizon, but the investment is going to come back very slowly over years, if not decades. So PACE was developed as a kind of an elegant solution to this. PACE financing allows a property owner to voluntarily enter into a special assessment with a local government to secure a private loan, and that loan can be repaid over a period of up to 25 years under Michigan statute. So the local government gets a free economic development tool, the property owner gets a very favorable loan, and the PACE lender gets the security of a property lien that's created by the special assessment and backed by that local government. So we have here some of the hallmarks of PACE financing. It is 100% upfront. That's a big incentive. Up to 25% of the value of the property is a fixed interest rate. Under Michigan statute, it can be up to 25 years. It doesn't have to run that long, but it can. And another really unique factor in a PACE loan is that it is non-recourse, meaning that it runs with the land. So it is attached to the special assessment as a lien on the property. And if the property owner makes the investment and sells it or goes out of business for whatever reason, the special assessment then lives with the property. So in the past couple of years, we've also developed a PACE Express program, which has, it's for smaller projects and it has fewer hoops than some of the larger projects. Under Michigan statute, projects greater than $250,000 have to have a savings guarantee that's actually made by the contractor. So the contractor would go in and conduct an energy audit that would show certain savings if investments in energy conservation measures are made. And they would essentially have to guarantee that they would make up the difference if their estimation fell short. PACE Express doesn't have that guarantee. So for less than $250,000, you don't have to prove that the savings are going to be greater than the cost of the project. But with that said, PACE Express can still help property owners afford upgrades that they might not otherwise have been able to swing. So what can you finance with PACE? So these are some of the things. These are definitely not all of the things, but this is sort of our staple, our bread and butter. Energy efficiency includes lighting, HVAC, windows, insulation, roofing, and caulking. It can finance water efficiency projects, including stormwater recapture, low flow toilets, sink, shower heads, and gray water systems. And we can also finance renewable energy projects, including solar energy, solar roofs, wind energy. Electric vehicle charging stations are specifically carved out under Michigan statute as something that we can fund. geothermal, and combined heat and power, and more. So if an efficiency or renewable energy upgrade saves money, it may qualify for PACE under statute. We have financed energy efficient elevators and energy efficient refrigeration. So the bottom line for those who are getting used to this program or just being introduced to it that I would love for you to take away when you're talking to folks out in the community and talking with business owners and thinking about how this fits into your plans is that PACE is supposed to make the financing worthwhile. It's supposed to make the benefits of these projects outweigh the costs for property owners. So really quickly, just running through kind of how we work and what it is that we do. So just a quick introduction to Michigan statute. So PACE exists in a number of states across the country. In Michigan, it was established by the Property Assist Clean Energy Act of 2010, and that allowed local governments, be they cities, townships, or counties, to opt into the program and enable them to create these special assessments. So currently, Lean and Green is the only PACE administrator in Michigan, and we serve 48 counties, cities, and townships in Michigan, and that comprises over 73% of Michiganders. Perhaps you do not see Ottawa or Allegan County on the list or highlighted in green here. We would love for that to change, and we work with local jurisdictions all the time to bring them into the program. Currently, Gunplain Township actually is in the program. I don't know if they're listed there. Might be a little bit outdated. They're a very recent addition. So what is it that we do? So Lean and Green Michigan, as a public-private partnership, allows local governments to benefit from economy of scale. PACE is a very specific area of the law, and local governments aren't going to be using it every day. But Aaron and Todd are there looking and monitoring special assessment agreements and analyzing them day in and day out to make sure that local governments stay compliant. So we work on behalf of local governments. So we help qualify projects and make sure that they're a good fit for the program, conduct due diligence, and then coordinate the lenders, contractors, and property owners. We also hold contractor trainings. Just sort of really quick, the circle of PACE, if you will. We sort of sit at the nexus with local government. So the local government creates a special assessment, and that's what provides security to the lender. A property owner in Michigan can be commercial, multifamily, nonprofit, or industrial. Michigan does not have residential PACE. So it's got to be a commercial building and a non-government entity at that. So it could be a hospital, restaurant, office. Multifamily, 4 units and above qualify as multifamily. A nonprofit could be a house of worship, private school, or cooperative. And we have also done several industrial projects. So the contractor designs the project, provides an energy audit, and for projects greater than $250,000, guarantees a savings to investment ratio of greater than 1. And also, I should note here that the project could be a gut rehab. It could be a traditional retrofit. It could also be new construction. There's a way that PACE works in that scenario as well. And then the lender underwrites the project and provides capital. 8 lenders have financed deals in Michigan. It is an open and competitive market, and we encourage property owners to look around. So market data, setting the pace. You got to work in some, good PACE puns in any presentation. So today, I just updated this the other day. We have closed 40 projects since the company was founded in 2015, and that is $82.9 million in private investment. And you can see in our little chart over here how much that amounts to in money saved, jobs created, and carbon emissions as well. So I will say that it's really interesting if you look over time. This one here. So we've been, gradually sort of increasing both the number of projects and the amount invested annually. We are up to 5 this year by April of 2021. In the past 12 months, we have closed 16 deals. And so the rate of folks taking advantage of PACE financing is increasing exponentially. I mean, Dan Gilbert's not shaking in his boots, but we're very proud. So here are some projects that we chose from last year to just sort of give you a sense of what PACE can do and what it's been used to finance. So this is a project that we just really love to talk about, Jane Street Grocers in Poletown, Detroit. It's an up and coming neighborhood. And the property owner took an abandoned church and applied all kinds of fairly traditional energy conservation measures to it. So building envelope, HVAC, lighting and controls, refrigeration, and solar. So it's going to be apartments upstairs and a grocery store and coffee shop downstairs. And the grocery store is going to carry produce from urban farms. So this was just a really small project, but one that's going to have a big impact on community development in that neighborhood. This was a PACE Express project. So just a reminder that this is kind of the expedited process. So as you can see here, just 115,000 financed over 20 years, and that was in the Wayne County PACE district. And again, the impact is just that it supports the community. So here's an example of how PACE can be applied to new construction. This was a deal closed last year in Shelby Township in Macomb County. And as you can imagine, lots of, rooms, people in and out, very intensive utility use. And so they invested in making the building very efficient and in water efficiency measures. So the money and savings on this one were really interesting. $3.6 million financed over 24 years. And I think the savings cumulative over time are going to be over $7 million. So the way that it works in new construction is if you can prove, if you're building above code essentially, and can prove that the investments that you're making above code will amount to greater savings, then you would qualify for PACE. Yeah, over $7 million over 24 years, an enormous amount. This one was a very interesting project because it was an example of PACE being used to refinance a project. This is not something we do all the time. This was actually the only one in Michigan, but it was really helpful to this business, which is a theater that is sort of an anchor in downtown Pontiac. And they had several years ago invested in high efficiency HVAC, LED lighting, and building insulation. And then when COVID hit, they fell on hard times. And so they decided to refinance this loan. And that enabled them to keep their doors open and keep from going out of business so that they would have a little bit of extra capital to weather the pandemic. Let's see a quote from the owner talking about how helpful it was. So fairly sizable, $1.8 million over 25 years. And there was actually a delay. I think a special deal worked out with the lender where they're not going to start paying it back until next year, just to give them some extra time to recover. Finally, this was just an example. So we started off with a $114,000 project, and then we moved into this pretty flashy new construction building that's happening in Greektown. It was our biggest deal yet, still is, as a matter of fact. So, again, large building, lots of occupancy, and was worth it to the owners to build above code and make it as efficient as possible. $13 million financed over 25 years. Getting into the nitty gritty and a little above my pay grade, but I was told by Todd that this was an extremely complex capital stack, but folks who were very motivated to save money. So again, going back to $13 million financed, projection of $26 million saved over 25 years. So something pretty extraordinary and a project that we're awfully proud of. So another thing that I would just put out to you is that if you think you have a PACE deal, please go ahead and give us a call. We talk with folks all the time. Sometimes the conversations are really quick and we find that it's maybe not a great fit for PACE, that there's another kind of financing that would be easier. PACE is not the easiest kind of a capital out there, but when it works really, really well. And we're here to help guide folks through that process and help local governments be compliant with it. But, it's kind of a funnel. We start with lots of conversations, and then with the right ones, we guide them through. So we just really hope to hear from you, and we hope that you're not a stranger. So with that, I think rather than questions, actually, if it's okay, I want to throw it over to Eric and Bob. Maybe Eric, I'll start with you and ask if you just wanted to share any thoughts about PACE and your experience with it in local government.
Yeah, no, we went through all the questions that you will when we set up our PACE district. The county board approved it. we were an early adopter 10 years ago, but it took a number of years before we did our first project in 2019. And then we've had one in 19, 20, and 21. Aaron is newer to the team. Elise is also. Todd has been around and really has a wealth of experience and makes it all easy and understandable, because it is a complicated system, once that you have to get comfortable with. But it makes energy efficiency more viable, more significant in the deals. We have had now 3 properties close, all 2 of them historic structures, an old school, a formal floral shop. The third one was a 50, 60-year-old bank building. But this has been a way to save the existing buildings in our community and bring them back to life with energy efficiency. And it makes for a wonderful story. So I can't speak highly enough about the team at Lean and Green. The treasurer at the county is often the kind of the resident agent to mind the store for the county. There's a little bit of work when you're conceiving of setting up the project and signing the documents. Friday was when we actually signed our 30th. So maybe that means I was the 40th. I'm not sure what else might have been in the list there. But it certainly is, very worthwhile to have this as one of the tools in your toolbox.
And Eric, if you're referring to 1030 Homes, then you were the 40th. Yep.
There we go. Yay.
Woohoo!
And I don't know if Bob Robinson, my colleague to the west, might have something to add.
Sure. We always have friendly competition with Ingham County, although it's an uphill battle for us from Eaton County. We're not quite as big, but I would agree with both Eric and Elise. The PACE program has been very good for us in Eaton County. It's a bit of work to go through for a business to put one of these together. Thankfully, we have Lean and Green that comes in as a third-party administrator, does really an A to Z approach in putting the deals together and making sure that they are energy efficient and savings. For us, I think the big advantage has been the ability to use it as a tool to attract and retain business in Eaton County. PACE is a program that would work for small businesses. We have been lucky to have some pretty good sized projects come along in Eaton County. We have a building owner in the west part of the county that he actually leases to the Michigan Public Service Commission. A great anchor business and client to be located in Eaton County. We had an old Lansing State Journal printing facility, which was no longer being used, kind of defunct, that was renovated into a training center for auto owners insurance. Again, another terrific, what I refer to as an anchor business for Eaton County. And we had a large internet infrastructure firm, Liquid Web, take advantage of PACE. They are so huge in terms of being an internet service provider. They have mega refrigeration and cooling equipment to keep all their servers cool. So that was an interesting project. And it's great to be able to see these businesses and these companies take advantage of a program that we feel will keep them in Eaton County for a while, because the PACE programs are generally structured over a 20-year period. So it's been good for us. We see it continuing to be good for us in Eaton County, and I'm very happy with the result, and I know the Board of Commissioners has been happy as well.
Good.
Thank you guys so much, as always, for your kind words and sort of testimony about how this has worked in your communities. I think sometimes, we come in and we're like, this is a perfect solution. And so it's nice to actually hear from people that have worked with it. So, to talk about, some of the challenges that can arise sometimes, but also just, that we're just to sort of validate the promise of PACE.
I would also say, because, we were an early adopter, so we actually had to come in a couple of years ago and update the paperwork through the Board of Commissioners. The most time consuming thing is really getting it through the Board of Commissioners. Once you've done that and everybody's asked their questions, had them answered, and you've got the documents to let you go forward, then it gets easier. Then it gets easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we do find as a team that after we, get the PACE program established in a jurisdiction, and then every county does it a little bit differently depending on, how big they are and the staff and how labor is divided. But once we sort of have, our contacts and the county has a workflow for how they feel comfortable with evaluating PACE deals, things can go more quickly. And by the second, third, fourth deal, it's just a well-oiled machine usually.
Yeah, I just want to, thank you again for coming in and presenting this. Becky, in Ottawa County, where's the county at on its journey towards establishing the district at this point?
Yeah, so going back to where it started, we had a developer contact the folks at Holland Township wanting to utilize PACE. So they approached the township to possibly establish a jurisdiction there. The township thought it might make more sense to present that to the county to see if the county would entertain it. Much easier to have a wider jurisdictional boundary where the projects can be for Lean and Green as much as anybody else. And PACE has been something that has been discussed at the county level for quite a while. So where we are is, Paul and I and our team were just doing due diligence, talk to the lease, looking into it. And right now we have it on the work session for next week with the Board of Commissioners. Like if you were to pick up the phone and call one of your commissioners right now, they may not even be aware that they're going to have a work session on it yet. So we're going to entertain their questions. A lot of them are pretty well versed in it already. So we'll visit with them at the work session. And if they feel that it's valuable, then we'll go forward through the rest of our process, which would be then on to planning and policy. And then on through the next board meeting, there'd be a public hearing and an intent to establish. And then we do another meeting and have the actual resolution to establish. And then, best case, if the commissioners decide to put it forward, we'd probably have it in place in June. But again, we're only at the work session stage. So I cannot speak for the commissioners in any fashion, whether they're going to embrace this or not. I expect they would overall, based on what I've learned from Lean and Green. It's really not a heavy lift from the county standpoint because Lean and Green really does all of that legwork. We just have to put the resolutions through. So that's kind of where we are. Keith?
Hi, Becky. Good to see you
Hi,
again.
nice to see you too.
And I see my good friend Dan Wedge is listening in from Ottawa County, or from Allegan County, sorry. Question / possibility, and being an ex-county guy, I kind of know how this might work. So there's a lot of things in the Ottawa County system because the city of Holland is strange in a lot of ways. And one of the ways we're strange is that we straddle two counties.
Mm-hmm.
And Becky, this might be as much for you. It might be Dan. It might be Elise and Aaron. Is there a possibility that you would be willing that if statutorily it allows Ottawa County to adopt for Ottawa County, but perhaps also adopt all of the city of Holland, including the portion of city of Holland that's in Allegan County? Is that something that's statutorily possible? And if so, would Ottawa County consider doing that?
Yeah, that's something that did come up too for those exact reasons. And the fact that it's our understanding, I won't speak for Allegan, but it's our understanding that PACE is something that Allegan has also looked at in the past. So we did discuss that uniqueness that is the city of Holland is straddling both jurisdictions. And whether or not it might make sense, excuse me, to do an urban cooperation agreement or an intergovernmental agreement, whichever one of those would work between the two counties. That's a possibility, but I think, and Elise, and I'll kind of let the rest of you that know a little bit more about it take over from there. I feel like it almost would make more sense for Ottawa to establish their jurisdiction and then Allegan establish one county-wide. I think that would allow for the most local units to take advantage of it, as opposed to doing something that accommodates just that chunk of the city of Holland that's in Allegan. To me, that's what would make the most sense, but I'll let Dan or Elise speak to that also.
No, thanks for that question. It comes up quite a bit, actually. So yes, it would make sense for Allegan to opt in. We love to have counties in because one of the things that we see once we have a PACE project in an area is that other folks start looking around and thinking like, hey, maybe that would work for me. And if we've brought in a township or we brought in a city and it's just outside of the local government line, then all of a sudden then it's another jurisdiction that we have to bring in or another hurdle for that project to clear. So it could be, for instance, and by statute, I mean, anyone can opt into it. We can't stop you. So if Allegan and Ottawa and the city of Holland wanted to opt in, that could also be a possibility. And we'll work with whoever decides that they want to lead the project in that case. Certainly in the case of Oakland County, for instance, we have, because Oakland County came in a bit later, we have a couple of suburbs, including Pontiac, I think, and Royal Oak became PACE jurisdictions before the county of Oakland did. So it can happen in sort of any way. And again, wherever it makes sense to put that special assessment, that's what we'll work with.
And if I can maybe add on to what Keith is asking there, just to make sure there's clarification, Holland Charter Township came to the county asking for the establishment of a PACE district for maybe its area. Could the township go ahead and declare their own without the county? And similarly, could the city declare a PACE district? It could be done at that sort of granular level otherwise.
Absolutely. And in fact, just an example of a project that is in process right now, actually at the border of Allegan and Kalamazoo counties. What was it? Gunplain Township, for instance, decided that they were going to opt in to the PACE program. Again, that does not preclude the county from opting in after the fact. So certainly the city could, the township could, the county could, all three of them could.
Thank you.
But again, it makes sense. And that's why probably there's a desire. If you do it at the county level, then you're all set. And it just, so there's a lot of rationale behind that. If the county
Agreed. Yes, it would make the most sense at the county level, brings in the most folks, again, just removes a hurdle for projects going forward in the future.
Elise, you mentioned also a couple times in your presentation, which I always note and go, oh, there's a reason behind that. Mm-hmm. Again, we're just talking about you have to have, legislative authority to do things in Dave and my world, right? You mentioned a few times that you can do PACE financing if it's beyond code requirements, which said in a different way would say, if it's something required by code, then you can't access PACE financing. If one is true, is the other also true? I was just kind of interested by that because you said if it's above code requirements, then you can get PACE financing.
So specifically for new construction, that is the rule that applies in that case. And again, the idea is that the model is then run with how much more efficient, because again, a building built to code is the worst building that you can build. Right? And so PACE is a tool in that case to go above and beyond, and that is then compliant with statute. In order for PACE to work the way, and actually I feel weird speaking about statute in front of the attorney, so I'm going to check in with Aaron and make sure that I'm getting this right. But essentially the statute is constructed in such a way that you have to show energy savings, period. And it was really designed initially for retrofits, right? And so that's fairly straightforward. Is what you're investing in going to get you to a place that's better than where you are right now? And that's pretty easy to model. But in order to make it apply to new construction, the built above code standard was what was adopted. Did I generally get that correct, Aaron?
Yeah, that's essentially correct. Perfect.
Yeah. That's a great point. Again, just kind of highlighting that this value of savings exceeds the cost. One question I had is, today that cost is electricity rates or natural gas costs or, other sort of direct costs. If a company has quantified or internalized the cost of carbon into its operating budget, and so it's either going to buy offsets or something to actually deal with becoming carbon neutral or reducing its carbon intensity, can it use that avoided procurement of carbon as a cost towards the PACE financing qualification?
That is an excellent question that I'm going to refer back to our President and General Counsel, Todd Williams, and I will get back to you right away. I would actually say in general, so Todd has actually specifically cautioned me in the past from saying utility bills, because it is the way, again, the statute's written, it's savings generally, and you can take an expansive view of that. Sometimes it's operation and management costs or tax credits that you're bringing in that are going to amount to the savings or be part of the savings equation. And so I don't know if carbon specifically could be used, but I think that it might be, and I would certainly check with Todd about that.
I don't, that would be news to me, Dave, if that were the case. My company does some of the back end engineering on some of the PACE projects in a variety of states, and I've not heard of anybody being able to capture the internal cost of carbon as part of the savings. That would be sweet, and I'd be happy to be wrong, but I don't think that that's the case at this point. And I think that's mostly because people can sort of invent their own internal cost of carbon versus if there was like a federal cost of carbon that was regulated.
If a carbon tax came into effect, well, then that's a real situation now at that point.
Right. Yeah, I think it's definitely good for at least a double, triple check with Todd, but I would be surprised if you could do that.
Yeah, there's discussions of establishing a carbon market at the federal level right now. This is what I'm hearing from the ag side of things. So if there was a standardized way of quantifying that, then it might be something that they could do. That's a good question. Yeah.
But you're saying at least that it could be, even if a lighting project improved productivity or did other things that were cost savings, that could be part of this generally category. It doesn't have to be just utility bills, though.
That is generally correct. And again, it would be situation specific. But so a good example of this was a project that I learned about where a company was replacing a very old boiler. And there was a gentleman who they employed to maintain the boiler because it was very old, and so was he. And so by replacing it, they allowed him to retire. And that his salary went towards the cost savings equation. So it could be that broad. That is a very unusual case, but just sort of to give you a sense of how that could work.
If I may add another anecdotal story to kind of explain how energy saving measures can be construed pretty broadly. We've got a project we're working on in Wayne County right now that is currently spending a lot of money to ship out all of their refuse and other leftover products from their construction. And the cost of shipping it out is a pretty sizable amount. By building a recycling unit to their facility, they're able to show the savings from the transport and those costs, and that goes into their PACE assessment, which is pretty neat too.
Thank you, Barry. That's awesome.
Hey, this is Dan Wedge from Allegan County. If I could jump in here for a minute. My question might be more for Elise to start out with. Besides the Holland Charter Township project, are there other projects that you're aware of either in the city of Holland or in Allegan County?
I would have to check with you on that. I know that in the city of Holland, there was something that was on our radar, but I think it was a very small project. And so, Dan, I would get back to you on that if I could get your email address.
Sure. Well, Allegan County, has been aware of the PACE program, and last year we did assist the township, moving forward with the JBS project. As you mentioned, that was kind of unique in that it their property bordered both counties. And then as they approached more towards the end of the year, they got on a pretty tight time frame. So it made more sense to keep their project on task to identify the township and help the township through that process. But yeah, I think we're aware of it, and I know county administrator's on as well, and he may want to add to this, but I think our perspective has been that, we're open to, providing opportunities for projects like this. But we just are unaware of, any other specific projects in Allegan County at this time. And so definitely be interested to know more about that if something pops up.
Oh, absolutely. And so, we're happy to work with you on maybe becoming a PACE district proactively, or we could just keep our eye out for the next project. But we're happy to continue that conversation. And yeah, with JBS, that was just a really strange and specific situation where the company just wanted some certainty moving forward that I think the possibility was going to be available. And Gunplane, I think, convened a special meeting just before Christmas to get that passed. And so that was not on the county's timeline. And I think everyone understood that was very reasonable. So
Sure.
a pleasure to meet you and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lynn. This is Rob Sarrow from Allegan County as well. Yeah, just going back to Keith's question, and I think Dan covered somewhat there that, we've been in research of this as well. So far, the request, in this case, as described, the local unit is, actually kind of preferred to have been able to help that business more directly in that case. I think as we move forward, Allegan County, first and foremost, wants to be an enabler for any of the businesses that are within its borders to help assist there, and then work with all of our partners. But I also know we certainly wouldn't want to stand in the way either of any progress. So I suspect what would be most helpful to us is as these requests, come forth from the township or from the city, if we could get more information on, how the overall structure is looking, and if we want to look at, having both counties move ahead into the PACE, then I think that's where I can work with the board and give them that opportunity. If for some reason they didn't want to pursue a countywide, then I think we could discuss some sort of alternative agreement. But I suspect that if there's enough, interest or reason to look countywide, that Allegan would probably still want to maintain that and be able to help those businesses and whatnot in the Holland portion there, and work together as we have in the past between Ottawa and Allegan. So I think we're aligned to be able to assist in a number of different ways.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate you and Dan spending time with us and continuing to be good partners. So we appreciate the support.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. And I'll just echo that, and also just add on that, what we're working towards here within this group, and thanks for joining us today, is really looking at the strategies over the next time horizon that'll continue to move the community's progress towards energy efficiency and lowering our carbon impact. And I think some sort of having this as an arrow in the quiver, to use is really a nice thing to be able to market and to share. We've had a couple businesses in the city of Holland that have been our customers that have come forward over the years that have asked about this kind of thing, and there hasn't been the presence of the financing setup in place. So I think it's just obviously, if it makes sense, again, and that's something that the counties are interested in doing. Certainly, I think you'll see that probably within our area anyway, here in Holland, there'll be some active marketing of that and active, education with some of our larger businesses and frankly, smaller ones too. It sounds like there's a lot of applications among small businesses as well, to try to help them be successful at not only improving their energy footprint, but also their cost effectiveness. So just appreciate you giving time today to the discussion.
No, absolutely. This is very, very helpful. And as we move forward, Dan can still be a great primary contact for this, and it'll be helpful to see how this develops. Like I said, the county's been interested and has, looked into this, but we haven't had that, I guess, kind of push yet to, really go countywide yet, just based on just receiving kind of limited interest. But we're happy to be part of this and the discussion. I actually I chimed in here for at least just a little bit, just for that reason, to show support to the group here. But I personally do need to jump off for a 4 o'clock segment of the daily Zoom.
All right, thank you, Rob.
Thank you. thank you again, everybody.
Yeah, so thank you, Elise, as well, Becky, your team's here, and thanks to it was Bob and Eric as well. Appreciate everybody giving time this afternoon, and Aaron. This is really good information. We've got a lot of things to try to pack in our day here, but Brian, Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure that others that might have questions have a chance to jump in before we let them go.
Yeah, I think in particular, any of the committee members have questions for Elise, Aaron, Eric, or Bob, now would be a great time to ask, or Becky.
Yep, and Elise just put email addresses in the chat box, and you guys all know how to find me. So if anything comes up at a later time, we're just an email away for additional questions too.
Yeah. Great.
All right, well, thank you so much for inviting us here today. We really appreciate it. Yeah, look forward to continuing the discussion with both counties and the city.
Agreed. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Eric and Bob. Really appreciate you joining in. Good to see you.
Bye.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Chair, that was one of the topics this afternoon, and just a reminder to the strategic development team that when you look at the opportunity matrix, you look back at that, you can see that that was something that was identified pretty early on as being a potential tool. It's not the only tool, potentially that could be used. It is, one of the things that we've identified, and you'll hear a little bit more about from our next speaker, is Ann Salyers, is that businesses have a tough time really kind of justifying sometimes where they are spending their capital. They've got limited access to capital, and they want to make sure that they're spending it on ways that are going to advance the business as well. And so having these kind of tools available to help businesses spread out that cost, help reach the ROI targets, is a key part of what might help spur some investment within our business community to lower their carbon intensity.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to make sure that we put that out there today, and you could hear a little bit more about that topic.
Yeah, I'll just add, just my company, we do a lot of the engineering, auditing, and modeling for a number of PACE projects in a number of states, and it's a great tool to have. Companies typically don't do energy efficiency or renewable energy projects for one of three reasons: either lack of knowledge, or lack of a good business case, or lack of capital. And PACE really helps with the second two when, in a particular sort of unique use case. Anyways, so we're like, it's hard for people to wrap their heads around. And I think one of the reasons, and you heard this in both counties and the city, is people have been like sort of talking about it for a while, and there's not just like an onslaught of organizations wanting to do it. And I think that that's mostly rooted in people totally don't understand exactly what it is and how it works. So it's an education gap. And also, if you're a business and you're thinking about doing a large project, either a new facility or a retrofit, you're probably first talking to your banks, and a lot of your to build your capital stack. And a lot of times, what banks have been able to put together have been attractive enough. And that's, I think, where the opportunity for PACE is on the education, is to be on the very front end with bankers and lenders, such that an owner, when they have an idea for a project, the people that they first call are talking about PACE as part of the option. Anyways, I think that's when that happens, the adoption rates will really, really increase, because it's a great way to finance projects. But anyways, that's just my 2 cents. Is we're my company anyways is a big fan of them, and help do the engineering on the back end. So it would be a great thing to have for Holland and Ottawa County.
Well, and for us, it's hard to market something that doesn't exist. And so,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard, when they talk about, it's like a chicken and egg thing a little bit, where, they want to wait for a project, but maybe sometimes it's better to go ahead and get the district set up, and then you can sort of market to it and try to get some activity under that area.
Yeah. Yep. I've known the people that started Leaning Green, Andy Levin, and then the next executive director, Bali, and now Todd. We've known them a long time, and it almost like most of their jurisdictions started with a single project, like advocating for it. And I think we would be wise to think about the inverse and just lead and say, we're going to offer this as a tool. And I think that, and then you market and educate, and people are going to sign up, and a lot more, they're going to understand it better and want to adopt it a lot quicker if we're actually selling it.
Yeah,
So.
it fits really well, Brian, doesn't it, with our education piece that we've done and we're doing better, and what Ann's going to talk about here in a moment too. So it's just another pretty effective tool in the toolbox, it seems.
Yeah.
So and it doesn't seem like there's any drawback from it, and it parallels kind of what we have on the residential side, which is necessary. And it's probably not an exact thing, and Brian probably knows more about this, and it was before I was here as city manager. It was just kind of finalized, but it kind of matches the deep investment that the city made in our facilities, especially at City Hall, but at others. So, kind of already checked the box there, and there were some specific financing that we had available that took advantage, like Jeff was saying, right? Like you do it when you're doing some other projects, and then you make the investment. So I think there's a pretty strong case where this makes a lot of sense to be one of our strategies moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Hear from Ann?
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Ann. Appreciate Ann coming back, and Ann's got a lot to cover today. And I appreciate what she's been able to do here to condense it into things that are really kind of leaning into the discussion on the next steps, and to get some discussion going among this group. And we will come back to this topic just as we have the other big levers and educational topics. And of course, we'll have both the discussions today, but also discussion we heard last time from Mary Ellen from Steelcase, also to kind of consider as we look at that area of the opportunity matrix. And so, Ann, I'm going to turn over to you so you can touch on some of the things otherwise that we've been working on and are in front of us in terms of the things that we're working on implementing next. So thank you again.
Thank you, Dave, and thanks everyone for having me back. So with the commercial and industrial buildings lever discussion, there's a lot to cover. It can be complex, so feel free to ask questions as we go, and I'll try to keep it moving. We'll start with stats. What's in the community energy plan? What work has been done to date by the task forces and the energy waste reduction programs? Barriers and benchmarking strategies that have been recommended, and end with some questions. And I showed this first slide to you with the residential educational session, and collectively, and you heard this earlier today, that buildings account for 76% of electricity use in the US, 40% of all energy use associated with greenhouse gas emissions. And this is tabulated by the Energy Information Administration. And I went flying by there. Can't talk that fast. Looking specifically at commercial building energy sources, and in the EIA's vernacular, commercial also includes industrial. Unlike residential buildings, electricity is the largest share of their energy consumption, where in your home, it's natural gas. As for how electricity is used, the majority goes to lighting in most buildings, then refrigeration, ventilation, and cooling. The all other bar that you see to the far right that says 18% is primarily things associated with production, motors, pumps, air compressors, and process equipment. So these would be the categories to zero in on. And, we talk about the conversion to LED lighting being the low-hanging fruit. Well, that's because it's a good share of buildings' energy consumption. Then in our service territory, these pie charts show the inverse relationship between the number of customers in each classification and the amount of electricity used. In 2020, 84% of retail electric sales came from businesses, yet 84% of our customers are residential. And that is what makes our market unique. Here's the chart of the 3 carbon footprint calculations that have been done that you've seen before, but highlighted is the industrial and commercial sector. In the 2010 baseline year, C&I greenhouse gas emissions represented 64% of our footprint. In 2018, it is now 71%. Attribute that to 3 things. 1, automobiles are more fuel efficient. The residential sector has made real energy efficiency gains, and the industrial sector has grown. Remember, we measure it on the emissions, the metric tons per capita. So some of that is a little bit of background. What does the community energy plan say about non-residential buildings? In this slide and the next are ones that were taken from Peter Garforth's first presentation of the plan to City Council in 2011. When it comes to the efficiency of homes and buildings, the CEP, as you read at the bottom of the slide, calls on us to systematically raise efficiency at a rate of, and this is in the second bullet under all buildings up near the top, 2.6% of building stock each year. It recommends developing using a voluntary energy performance labeling program, which I'll touch on later. And for non-residential buildings, this is now second bullet from the bottom, it calls on us to put equal focus on both efficient operation and new construction. Of the 5 scale projects recommended in the community energy plan, all but number 2 on this list pertain to the non-residential buildings. The first one, Industrial Park Integrated Energy Services, is sometimes called industrial bundling, or the sharing of utilities between buildings that are in close proximity to one another. So for an example, take the Meijer on 16th Street. It backs up to the GVSU building on Waverly. And what if they were connected so that the waste heat from the refrigeration cases at Meijer was captured and then pumped over to heat the GVSU building? So that's kind of what's meant by sharing utilities and resources. In an industrial park with interconnected infrastructure, you can even expand on what's considered a utility managed by W. Compressed air, for example, could be one of those utilities. The task team that studied this concept surveyed customers in the northern and southern industrial park areas to find out the feasibility and interest by the different businesses located there. And it proved to be nearly a futile exercise. The big learning was that this concept works best when building a new industrial park or repurposing an old one, not retrofitting an existing one. So what made this a nearly futile exercise was how little customers knew about their energy use. Results indicated little knowledge about many of the questions that were asked. The study was valuable, though, nonetheless. They found varying ages and condition of equipment. The newer the equipment, the less interest there was because the investment had already been made and that company was set for now. Additional electric capacity would be needed. So that was another drawback. So here the connection costs would outweigh the savings of efficiency of getting electricity from a larger resource. So in other words, it was cheaper to get it from a larger resource than what the connection costs and infrastructure would require on a more localized basis. And customer needs varied greatly depending upon the nature of the business. Where it has been successful financially are repurposed industrial sites like Kodak Park in Rochester, New York, or Bethlehem Steel in Pennsylvania. So the conclusion was it's a concept to keep in mind for the future. But it was great that that study was done. The scale projects 3, 4, and 5 are all about district energy initial networks that were identified by Garforth. And so they were, different locations that had district energy potential. The District Energy Task Force recommended and commissioned 2 studies. One was examining a low temperature district energy, utilizing and expanding the snowmelt system. The other study looked at a high temperature system, utilizing Holland Energy Park with Hope College boilers as backup. And what they learned was planned buildings still in the design phase are best candidates for connecting to a district energy system. So in other words, new buildings. Some existing building retrofits may be financially feasible, but it's dependent on the mechanical system. Only 10% or 16 of the 157 downtown buildings in the study have heat pump systems, which are most conducive to hooking up to district energy. And over 60% of that 10% of that square footage was Freedom Village alone. Retrofits to existing buildings without heat pump systems are the least feasible. In other words, when you're converting a furnace over to the heat pump system, and would not see a positive return for over the 25 years of the equipment life. So the next steps became to test and monitor water quality of the new snowmelt system once operational at Holland Energy Park, monitor temperature data of expanded snowmelt loop for detailed design development, perform additional analysis to determine the cooling feasibility of the system once the summer loop temperatures and operational costs could be determined. And then along came the Civic Center renovation to be a pilot demonstration project. So Matt Van Dyken and team have been trying to monitor the effectiveness and cost savings, but because of the slow startup in the building use and then the pandemic, there hasn't been useful information produced. Those were really the scale projects. Then the plan also had a number of enabling mechanisms. We talked about this a little bit with the residential buildings, and that is energy performance labeling. And that can be a strategy for businesses as well. So a couple of familiar ones are Energy Star and LEED. Energy Star is an EPA program. They've developed fairly easy to use software for businesses and that can be used for energy management called Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Brian can tell you all about how that works. His business does this a lot for other businesses. In using it, the EPA has built a huge database that they can slice and dice by any building type and square footage. And the top 25 buildings or facilities nationwide can earn Energy Star certification with a score of 75 or higher out of their 100-point system. Holland BPW Service Center earned Energy Star in 2014. At that time, Kohl's was the only other building in the Holland area that we knew of that was Energy Star, and they do this corporately. So as you walk into a Kohl's, you'll see the Energy Star logo etched on the doors, just like now at City Hall. After the Schneider building retrofits, all the 11 city municipal buildings in, I believe it was 2018, are now Energy Star. And I think as you enter City Hall, you see the etching of the Energy Star label. Contests are another strategy to spur action. And the Michigan or West Michigan U.S. Green Building Council runs a Battle of the Buildings for energy reduction every year. And West Ottawa High School won that in 2019. The U.S. Green Building Council runs the LEED rating system, standing for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And the LEED buildings that I am aware of in Holland area include City Flats, and they were the first LEED Gold certified hotel in the Midwest. They were quite leading edge with that. And then there are a couple of buildings on the Hope College campus, the Jack Miller Center and the Boltman Center. And whether they apply for LEED certification or not, my understanding is Hope College builds all of their buildings now to a minimum of LEED Silver. Codes and guidelines for residential and non-residential buildings is another enabling mechanism. And so enabling mechanism number 6 is a strategy that will help Holland ensure that, as stated before, in Michigan, that will ensure that Holland, the clear current planning, renovation, construction guidelines for homes and buildings that support energy and greenhouse gas performance targets of the CEP are in place. And as we've talked about before, in Michigan, the state establishes the energy code, not the municipality. ASHRAE 90.1 2013 was adopted in Michigan in 2017 as the building standard for non-residential buildings. This graph shows how the EUI, or Energy Use Index, which is the average consumption per square foot, has gone down each time that energy standard is set higher and becomes more stringent. Another standard is ISO 50001, and which provides a practical way to improve energy use through the development of an energy management system. And it's based on a management system or model of continual improvement, but applied and specifically looking at energy use. So this could be something, we could encourage. It makes it easier for organizations to integrate energy management into their overall efforts to improve quality and environmental management. But we don't know who has or hasn't achieved this standard in Holland. I think that's one of the things, maybe the survey, or, you know, if we go out and have these discussions with companies to find out if they pursue ISO 50001. And PJ, is that something your company has looked at or done?
Yes, we are certified under ISO for the environmental standards.
Okay. So
our customers influence us to do that as well.
You're PJ, you're not 50,001 though, you're 14 or 45.
That is actually correct, Brian. It's the 14 series.
Yeah, I would be, this is slightly educated opinion. I would be pretty surprised if anybody in Holland was 50,001. Maybe Magna. I don't know. I don't know of any, and we know quite a few of the folks. So it's a big thing in Europe. It's like darn near mandatory in Europe. And so you do end up having some European companies who have buildings in the States that are doing this, but not across the board. Like Bentler isn't, and they're obviously in Germany. But anyways.
But the idea of having an energy management system, we've done some training, put some workshops on how to do that. So, I mean, we could introduce and do more education on a version of this that's much lighter and scaled for our size businesses and where they are.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's it would be great for people to be doing it, no doubt about it. It's just not super popular. And that's just not Holland. That's like across all the states, it's not very popular.
Mm-hmm.
Not because people don't like it in theory, it's just not adopted as much.
It's a lot of work, a lot of documentation for businesses to do that. There's also been a commercial and institutional task force that was led by Mr. Energy, Brian Peugeot, from 2013 to 2016. Did a great job. And they had as their goal to develop and plan to inspire mass adoption of energy efficiency. It led to the task force and BPW analyzing the SIC codes to see what market segments might have similar energy use and needs. Where there were similarities, maybe energy efficiency packages that could help make upgrade projects easier and less expensive, could be identified. So this led to what we refer to as the 4R study. And the 4 R's were retail, religious, restaurants, and refrigeration. Refrigeration was small businesses that have refrigeration equipment, like small grocers and convenience stores. So there were 13 buildings that received energy audits and answered several survey questions. Each received energy improvement recommendations with an ROI analysis. The recommendations were made to the steering committee and board and council at a study session, but the recommendations after this study by the task force have not yet been operationalized. So that's why it's on the list of your opportunities. Distributed generation is another item to note, more in the trends category. That distributed generation is growing in popularity for the reasons that you see listed. Distributed generation is on-site customer-owned power generation using renewables or combined heat and power. In Michigan, you see that wind and solar are often the source, are most often the source, with wind having flattened out. So the growth really seems to be in solar. Then there's the CNI energy waste reduction program. So while all that work led by the task forces was taking place, so too was the energy waste reduction program. And let me tell you a bit about what we offer for commercial and industrial customers under the Energy Smart program name. There are incentives, rebates for upgrading the efficiency of buildings and equipment. Prescriptive rebates are the one-to-one replacements. Custom means a renovation or a redesign. So take exterior lighting in a church parking lot, for example. Replacing the orange sodium halide lamp with LED would be considered prescriptive. You know, it's one-on-one. But if you're in doing so, you reconfigured the lamp post, maybe took out some fixtures because you didn't need as many because the LED lighting provided the same lumens, but with fewer fixtures, then that would be considered a custom project. There's also a small business program as well as pilot projects, education, and free energy consultations. And here's the mix. On the left is what % of the savings come from small business projects versus regular prescription and custom projects. Annually, we do about 120 to 150 projects a year. The pie chart on the right shows the majority of projects continue to be lighting, although we're seeing a nice rise in compressed air. The lighting ratio used to be much higher. And in 2020, our top 50 customers brought in 1/3 of the savings. Last year, like other years, it was 70. Last year, I guess, unlike other years, it was 70%. So we were reaching many more smaller customers, and the pandemic may have also been a factor this past year. In the Frost study that we did last year, we got a sense for the awareness of our programs and services, as well as how important it is that we offer this assistance. 100% of the 120 or so responses we received said it is very or extremely important to offer these programs. So that was awareness and importance. How about participation? 95% of respondents have taken advantage of the rebates. So that's a pretty high percentage. Not all of them every year, but good participation. Least awareness and participation is in the educational workshops and events that we host. And what about LED conversion? What's the saturation? You know, we've been at this a while. It's high in the number who have done some conversion, you know, 93%, but there is still lots of room to complete the conversion when you look at what % of their facility have they converted to LED.
Mm-hmm.
And what about the education programs? Under the education umbrella, we offer events, publications, courses, and consultations. There's no lack of content. It's clear we need to do a better job of promoting them, because I would guess that you're pretty surprised to see all these different things that are offered. And it's what survey respondents are least aware of. So, you know, maybe some more horsepower would help in this arena. In some regards, it's staffing. But our goal is to become your trusted energy advisor. So, the diagrams here, like a sample of an invitation, the popular breakfast with Barry we do for customers at the beginning of the year. We haven't been able to do it the last couple of years. This houses of worship, that came out of the 4R study and other work that Barry has done with churches and gathered it into a guidebook. And we'd like to do more of those kinds of publications. And then this 9 energy waste is a good place to start for looking at your own business on where you might find energy savings. And this becomes the crux of the strategic energy management program on companies finding through continuous improvement ways to save energy. Then our pilot programs are also educational in nature. They are for demonstrating emerging technology in public places. So in 2012, 2013, the pedestrian lighting in Centennial Park was converted to dimmable LED lighting. And that was a BPW pilot project in our program. And that was followed by the Park Theater marquee lighting, converting that to LED. And at the Holland Arts Council, the galleries were converted to LED lighting. And we measure the annual savings, and in addition to articles in the Holland Sentinel, we often publish informational brochures so that others can learn from the findings and be inspired and apply them to their businesses. When the West Michigan Regional Airport, the new terminal was built, there was opportunity to demonstrate a West Michigan invention, the Pleotint dynamic glass. And after it was installed, we did an engineering study that quantified the energy savings and comfort benefits of this chromatic glass. So imagine taking, the people with glasses that automatically turn into sunglasses when they walk outdoors. Doing this on a large scale is what the glass does in that building. So comparing that to conventional building glass. And so we put that into a educational brochure. So the 4R study and half of the strategic energy management program expenses were also classified as pilot projects. Now moving on and looking at what are the barriers to implementing energy efficiency projects by business, what's getting in the way of companies implementing more. For small businesses, it's typically a lack of time. The owner is too busy running the business to think about energy. There's also a lack of knowledge, awareness, and planning. They want to save energy, but don't know where to start, and preferably would like somebody else to just take care of it for them. Cash flow, the challenge of managing cash can impede the funding of energy efficiency projects, especially for small businesses. For large businesses, we often see it's not a priority of top management. Facility managers get frustrated trying to make the business case to upper management. The ROI is too small or takes too long, or funding is channeled to new product development or market expansion rather than internal operational projects. So for large companies, we see most of the activity in energy efficiency in the last quarter of their fiscal year, when the remaining or leftover funds become available to use for energy efficiency. As we've talked about before, starting in 2022, we have more latitude in how we invest in and deliver our energy waste reduction program, and have committed to increasing our annual KWH savings from 1% to 2% over a 3-year period. And some of the things to note that as low-hanging fruit measures get completed, costs will go up and more hand-holding will be needed. More intentional focus on small businesses and commercial business customers could be a good source of savings by implementing the 4R report recommendations and developing turnkey solutions that include project management support. Most of our promotion to date has been pull marketing, where we wait for the customer to come to us, as in waiting until they submit a rebate application to us. To get to the 2%, we're going to need more push marketing or outreach to them, going to where they are and simply taking care of the project for them. The 4R study recommendation, to give you a little insight there, recommended implementing a pilot program to inform a program to operationalize. And this pilot program has not yet been done. And it proposes packages with decreasing levels of engagement, funding, and service. And they put it in the context of these different car model plans, with the Tesla being the most aggressive and progressive approach, including free energy audits, free dashboard reporting on a monthly basis, customized rebate programs, 0% financing, incentives for the contractors, and project management. So none of the details of the recommendation has been vetted or fleshed out. So it remains a recommendation on your opportunities list. But it was, it's a worthwhile read to read the whole report, and enlightening on the survey questions, how customers responded. So your opportunity matrix ideas, in the column of the 3 to 5 year goals for C&I buildings, there is, implementing the energy waste reduction revisions and increasing the savings target, which we've committed to the 2%, implementing the C&I task force recommendations from the 4R study and other recommendations they made. We heard today about creating a PACE district, recommending position on state adoption of revised building codes, promoting electrification, encourage companies to exceed energy standards in new construction or renovated structures, implementing property transfer energy performance disclosure requirements. That would be the building labeling type ideas. And then determine level of enhanced heat pump performance at Civic Center from use of the snow melt system. So that's still out there as opportunity to learn and lead to the next step. And taking a look at what others are doing, other communities. Here's a snippet from three cities out of Joe's benchmarking work. Detroit City Council Green Task Force is working on developing a commercial benchmarking and transparency ordinance and reducing citywide average C&I energy consumption per square foot by 30%. Dubuque, Iowa's Climate Action Plan is producing detailed solar feasibility assessments for their top 5 prospects, C&I prospects. And they too are requiring all buildings 50,000 square feet or larger. 50,000 square feet happens to be the size of City Hall, to give you context of how big that is. or larger to implement energy benchmarking. So that's performance tracking and annual reporting. And I find reading about Eau Claire, Wisconsin, that they're quite similar to Holland in that they have a high CNI consumption ratio. Not quite as high as ours, but much higher than most cities. And they're promoting use of the city's net zero energy building guide. So instead of it being a building energy code, they've developed energy building guide that helps buildings get to net zero. And they want to see 10 CNI projects by 2030. Do I have 2030 there as their goal? And they're also exploring citywide sponsored low-cost energy efficiency and renewable energy financing options for businesses. So we might want to check into what they're proposing in that arena. So that is a quick speed through of a lot of what's been going on with the CNI market and buildings, and leads to the questions that you'll be discussing, which is, what strategies emerge as being a priority? What goals could be established or policies adopted? Metrics to report, what should be funded? So how about questions that you have on any of these areas regarding CNI buildings?
Thanks, Ann. Anyone have any questions?
Not a question, Brian, but if I can, if nobody else has a question right now, I just, kind of re-emphasizing what Ann is talking about, going back a couple slides, if you would, Ann, to the opportunity matrix ideas there.
Yeah.
So again, every lever that we have been trying to help you become educated on, back at the beginning of this, like in the second meeting or so that we met, there's been an opportunity matrix out there. And this is probably the largest group of strategies. Maybe second behind that would be in the electric portfolio area, but they are, a lot of very similar things to what you heard on these other communities too. And you look at transparency as being a mandate, but then also in terms of the incentive areas, working on some of the things that we currently have in place with regard to our energy waste reduction program, and then also offering ways of easing the burden of financing, which is a strategy, specifically a PACE district being a tool in that regard. So, and then there's the overall encouragement, because we don't have the ability to go beyond the state code, but there's the ability to either encourage the state to adopt the stricter code, or also figure out ways of working with our developers in the community here to find opportunities for them to be aware of easy ways to go beyond that to help market their buildings, or find voluntary, efforts on their part until there is the teeth in the code, coming down at the state level. So,
hey, Dave. Dave, can you, or Ann, can you just more, I need to hear it again. What I'm looking at right here on the opportunity matrix, 3 to 5 year goals, this is currently what was set in motion from 2018, or this is what you want us to, this is for us to like subtract from or add to?
Correct.
Relative to moving forward. Okay.
The second in the 2018, in this particular area, the things that we're focused on are really the development of what happens after the state mandate on electric waste reduction. And so we have a recommendation in that, and that is, being budgeted for. But obviously, I think the next step here for the group would be to implement the EWR program. But then there are other things for the next 3 to 5 years for your consideration. and they're on this list, and they could be added to, subtracted to, redefined. That's what we're trying to do with each of these levers here, is give you that potential list to work from.
Right. So, and maybe this isn't a clear line or one that we would have to just decide on together. For instance, the second bullet, implement the C&I task force recommendations. This was a task force from 7 years ago that did the 4R study, and a report came out of it, and it had recommendations in it. Where does strategy begin and tactic, or strategy end and, tactical begin? Because I feel like we'd probably, are we saying there should be another task force to revisit the C&I recommendations and update them? Or are we actually going to want to get into those recommendations and tweak them ourselves and then say, implement this? Where do you see the line?
I think you can get into that if you want to establish any specific strategy and goal associated with the concept of commercial and institutional building improvements. And then, that using the tools that have been identified in the 4R study, to achieve that, if that's where this group wants to recommend, that's within the purview of this group to do that.
Okay. Tim, are you chiming in there?
No, I'm right here.
Okay.
I'm listening and thankfully able to talk now also via my phone.
Yeah, sorry, I saw your phone number light up there and I wasn't sure if you were trying to say something or not. So Nikki, do you have a question?
I do, and it's Ann alluded to it, and it struck me especially with the car promotions, and I see it looking at what was recommended 3 or 5 years ago, and now there's such a gap between the recommendations and what should be done or what's recommended and what's actually been done. We have the education. I mean, this is great to look through, but sometimes it's not our job to see that through and make sure it gets done. But where does that happen? Where's that gap get closed? What a great idea. I mean, these are great ideas. Yeah, the pilot program. How does that happen? How does that get put into place? How do what we recommend get implemented? Because some of the stuff that was recommended 10 years ago, and then the last one, the last study, strategic development team doesn't happen. I mean, there are barriers. There are things.
No, each thing that the last STT decided for us to do, we've been working on. This 4R study was not in the STT recommendations from 2018.
Yeah, this goes way back. And to Ann and Dave's credit, the strategic energy management pilot you guys did for industrials in the last couple of years, or whatever that was called, Ann, I don't remember, but that very much, is very much in the spirit of a lot of the 4R study sort of concepts. I mean, it wasn't explicitly around religion and retail in those buildings, but I think conceptually you definitely have piloted some of what you were getting at here, if I'm not misunderstanding it.
Dave, I'm gonna rephrase something, and I don't want to be defensive here, but it's come up a couple times, so I'm just gonna say it because I tend to be kind of blunt. Things that historically have been said, hey, this is an established strategy, and where maybe we haven't met a strategy, that's a pretty short list.
Right.
I mean, an extremely short list. I mean, the two that come to mind are things that are outside of our control, where it would either be district heating, which is an analysis, and civic center because it hasn't been full implemented, and then we've had COVID. And then home energy retrofits with the homes, which was a very aggressive goal, but ultimately we can't make people participate, you know, in the program. And that's also been complicated by COVID. Can you think of another kind of historic thing that maybe we haven't met?
I mean, the only other one was in the original list from 2012 where, you know, Ann touched on pretty early, and that was this industrial cluster, you know, of services that just doesn't fit the model of our industrial centers that we have, because they're not really set up for that. And there wasn't a real good business case again for that. But again, you know, if you go back to the CEP, it says that these things that are strategies deserve a business case evaluation for them. And just because they were identified early on as strategies, and frankly, that's the 4-step process when you go through the steering committee work. Now, once it's turned over, these strategies are turned over to a steering committee, and then the staff works on implementing them. You know, it's to study, come up with a plan, to pilot it, and then ultimately operationalize it, which many things have come to operational, such as building labeling and on-bill financing and home energy retrofit program. And now lately with the EV incentives and the adoption of a city and BPW policy for vehicles and maintenance equipment procurement, and some of the other things that have been worked on this last go around. But not everything is going to be recommended, you know, based upon the business case that's come up with. In this particular case, as far as the 4R study, you know, again, financing, you know, is identified there as one of the things that's, you know, an on-bill finance. Well, we don't have statutory authority for ourselves to do that. We have the on-bill financing for residential. We talked about a PACE financing option that's available today. Are there other financing options that, you know, could be evaluated? So to Brian, to your point on taking this and now saying, I want to see it done, I think the strategy would be, you know, find the things that are limiting the implementation of it and eliminate those things, or work on solutions to those things. A lot of the 4R study, you know, as far as the different levels, is not just financing, but it's also to the extent that there's a concierge type of service to it, where, you know, there's this hand holding, or maybe even sort of like giving it over to somebody to say, please do this for me. And so those are all, again, evaluations of the level of service that's involved with that. You know, what does it cost to have dedicated individuals running that down for businesses? How does that get paid for? You know, but this was not in the 2018 list that we're working on right now. Okay. Right. So I'm just saying, you know, my answer to that was, it's not that, you know, a group from the SDT said, do this, and then nothing's been done with it. We haven't been given that as the list coming out of the 2017 SDT work.
Right. No, that makes good sense. Do we have a sense of, so this is 70, you know, the industrial, commercial, institutional building stock is 71% of the pie right now. So that's a big percent of the pie. Do we have a sense of like the current ideas that are on the table? Do we have a guess as to like how big of an impact, if all, you know, they can make? Or is that part of what we need to say needs to be studied? Or what's our sense there?
As far as like if you want to take any one of those underneath the opportunity matrix, you know, what would implementing the EWR program mean? We know that's quantifiable. We have a good sense, because it's getting to 2% per year. You know what that impact is.
Right.
Implementing the C&I recommendations of the 4R study. Again, if there were a target number of buildings that would participate in it, I think we could come up with some sort of quantification for that. But we don't have that, I don't think, unless that was identified in the 4R study more specifically. But I think we could pull that out. Creating a PACE district. Again, you see what the 40 projects since since PACE has been sort of implemented in Michigan, has been discussed today when we were hearing that presentation. But again, how actively marketed, was that? So we might be able to do some things to quantify what that looks like.
Yeah.
These are going to be general goal type of movements. If we're at 8 metric tons per capita in our industry right now, I mean, if this group says, we want to shave 20% off that number with these programs in the next 5 years or whatever, I don't know what the number is that we want to look at, right? I'm just throwing something out there, but that's what gives us in the individual areas kind of the goal to try to pursue. And I think staff can help sort of weigh in on what kind of quantities are in these. But I don't think we have it all understood at this point of what's possible in each of these strategies yet.
Yeah. I'm going to be quiet for a minute. I live and breathe this stuff every day, you guys. So I have 1,001 thoughts. I'd like other people to have a question, or, who's curious about something that they're seeing or not seeing.
And we're circle back, Mr. Chair, too, but I know that sometimes we all play different roles. We're also at past the 5 o'clock hour, and there's Dave, I don't know, was there one other?
Our plan is to revisit this next meeting. We'll have Mary Ellen's presentation we've absorbed kind of, which is more focused on the fact that there's a lot of interest in promoting scientific-based targets out there among some of our larger industries, and that they're adopting their own goals. And, there's an awareness element to that I think we need to consider too, because they can come alongside, what the community is doing and be part of this solution. And I think we've got today with regard to evaluating the tool of PACE or other sort of financing instruments as being a barrier that Ann has identified, but also we've got the other things on the opportunity matrix to come back and talk about. And I think we can come back and do that in more detail next time. And then we've got the comparisons, and that's the other piece of it that Joe is doing his work, and I know he's on today. I think he's very close at this point to being able to give you something from a narrative perspective on these comparable communities. So we'll have more time to digest it.
Yeah.
But our goal in this for you now, this is the last lever. We've been through all 5 at this point. And every time that we've done that, we've said these are possible strategies to consider. Staff is ready now at this point to start helping this group flesh out those strategy opportunities. But we're interested in kind of resonance. What actually makes sense to you? What sounds good to explore? What doesn't sound as encouraging. And so, because we don't want to spend a whole lot of time on things that this group, either finds to be not enough or too much, or the wrong area, too much spend, whatever it might be, not available to us because it's not in our power. Those kind of things are important elements of feedback as we try to narrow and then flesh out the list of strategies for ultimate your consideration and incorporation into a final report and recommendation to City Council.
Yeah. PJ's got a question. Can I just slide in? Can you give us a quick 1-minute update on the feedback, Frost Center and other communities?
Yeah. So our group, Keith and I we've been met with Julie Orney a couple times now. And then the task for our group, as far as staff, was to take a shot at fleshing out some potential survey questions for the business sector. I have a draft actually of those at this point. We had a meeting internally, and now we have a revised set of questions. And I think what we have is sort of a divergent path here a little bit. We have a good number of businesses, whether they're small or large, are going to be surveyed based upon a standard list of questions. But then there's a lot more detailed questions that we also came up with that we think are good opportunities for this listening tour concept that was talked about at the last meeting, where with some of our larger key accounts, we would go and sit down and ask them more detailed questions about some of their individual company goals, whether or not they're doing any buying of credits or offsets, whether they're committing to any scientific-based targets at this point. I mean, some of those things that are a little bit deeper conversational exploration. So we've got those two things here at this point that we have worked on. So on the first set of all businesses survey, we need to get back with Julie now, lay those out, get her feedback on how she would actually structure the survey, because there's a lot of if-thens, you know, if you don't have this apply, then you move on. So she can construct the actual survey instrument now from the list of questions and also supplement that.
Okay, cool. PJ, sorry to slide in there.
Well, from a few minutes ago, Brian, it's more of a comment than a question. As a industrial business owner and operator of a facility, looking at the opportunity matrix, going through the 3 to 5 year goals, reading these, they do read like tactics. It's hard for me to identify specifically which or to what extent any of these my company would have energy for. However, as we're going through this process, I believe that, you know, certainly my company and like-kind companies would have a lot of interest in discussing concrete goals, concrete, you know, reduction objectives and so on, and try to find things that, rather than offerings that we could either pick or reject, but maybe try to identify some things that all Holland industry can buy into. And kind of on the side, some of these other sources that we have here, namely, the documentation that cites Ireland and stuff like that. They cite examples of municipalities that did pick 1 or 2, 3 things and invited the entire industrial base to subscribe into them. One example, and going on memory, was one of the towns in Ireland decided to attack motor usage, and they invited everybody to evaluate that. And where I'm just thinking out loud with you is, when I look at this, I think it would be very constructive for us to, after we go through this what we've done with the opportunity matrix, to start shift into thinking about quantifiable goals that would be challenging for Holland industry, and alongside with that, identify a few things that we could call on a very broad range of Holland manufacturers or Holland industry to buy into.
Yep. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I want to be cognizant of the time, like we talked about, and we are going to revisit this. I think I'll leave, unless there's something else burning, I'll leave you all with a couple of thoughts. This is a really opportunistic time for us to empower Dave and Keith and the city and BPW to be really, I think, progressive and aggressive in this particular space, because of Mary Ellen's commentary last time, 2 weeks ago. And I don't know if you noticed it, but when Ann gave her report today, one of the interesting things when all the surveys of businesses happened years ago was that businesses didn't really even know how much money they spent in energy. It's a fractional, and PJ can probably attest to this, you're relative to revenue, it might be 1%, 2%, 3% on the high end of revenue as a cost. And so it's not something that rises to the top, and internally at organizations, that capital has to compete with top line like growth capital. And so there's real barriers that are not technological that are at play within industrial and commercial and institutional organizations. But one of the things that we have that we didn't 7 or 10 years ago, or even 3 years ago, is the market is saying you have to, like, you really should be thinking about doing this. And sales is actually now caring about carbon and carbon reduction. Whereas before it was purely a finance, procurement, and facilities, it was always about lower operating costs. Well, now it's both. When Steelcase says you got to do X, Y, and Z to be a preferred supplier, those are salespeople that care about that, not ops people. So we've got more stakeholders at these companies caring about this stuff. So when we're thinking about this over the next couple of weeks, we want to be thinking about increasing education, increasing the competitiveness of the business case, and as many creative ways to finance these projects as possible, such that businesses like PJ's can be thinking about these projects in ways that are different than competing with sales internally, right? He's like, you got to get the PJs of Holland thinking, oh, this is not just lowering my operating costs, it's also helping me with my sales. And if we can get businesses to be thinking about it that way, which the market is helping, then that 71% is going to be, we're going to really, really make a big dent. So just be thinking about education, business case, capital, and then and Ann mentioned this as well, but time. A lot of companies, it's non-core business, so time is the other thing. We got to solve for those things in this lever.
Yeah, and I agree, PJ, that what's written here is it's especially in a lot of these very tactical. But I think what Brian just emphasized within those kind of three, those are more strategic things. These kind of fall into maybe some of those larger groupings. And as I think when we flesh out the ultimate list, it will start with more of a strategic focus. It may have some emphasis in terms of where you're heading, like, ease on capital is obviously they're looking for alternative financing opportunities as being a more specific focus within easing that capital requirement strategy. So I agree with you though, in terms of how it would sort of flow and be worded. Yeah, it's a lot. It's got to start on that more strategic high level than what it is right now.
I would concur.
Cool.
One thing real quick here, just looking ahead to next time. What was I going to say now? I lost my train of thought. Is that we do have, again, just the revisit of this next time. And I think other than that, I don't know, Keith, anything else that we need to share with the group at this point?
We're back on every other week cadence, right? 2 weeks.
Yeah, so we're May 3 and 17, I think, are the scheduled meetings. So by next time we come back, we should talk about, do we do May 30, add in a third one, but let's just know we're May 3 and 17. And then Dave, I was unclear because I know Joe's still on the call. Did we want Joe to spend a couple minutes, or are we set and we'll just do a deeper dive next time with Joe?
If he can give us 30 seconds as to where he's at, and next time we'll be able to spend a lot more time in detail on that, I think. But Joe, can you give us just a quick summary of where you're at on that connection with communities?
Yeah, so my last check-in was that big matrix that we went through. We identified 4 focus cities. Those are Grand Rapids, Lansing, Eau Claire, and Dubuque. I've met with 3 sustainability managers from those communities. I've got a 4th one this week. And then I will have a written report to drop into that recommendation that you guys are writing up, as well as some reports for you guys to listen to and hear as well. So just an update on the findings of the deep dive of those cities coming in the next 2 weeks.
Thanks, Joe. The other thing I did remember what I was going to mention is that in the resources document, the educational tactical action team had finished their work of putting their report together, and it's got some prioritization around it. So I would encourage, again, in revisiting the opportunities under the education lever, that is in your resources document and available to you to read now from that group. And so there's some real good focus ideas within that.
Great.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Dave.
Yes, sir.
Any other hot burning items for any of you?
Will today's slides be on the resource document?
I'm sorry?
Will today's slides be on?
Yeah, just as we have with the other ones, we'll get this posted out there. I don't think yet, I don't know if we have Mary Ellen's slide deck, but I think this one, and we'll be able to reach out to the PACE people as well, and Becky, and probably get that slide deck. And of course, the video is going to be downloaded here shortly as well, and will be available.
The videos always get uploaded faster than the PowerPoints, because really the PowerPoints usually we wait and it goes in the document next time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Great.
See you.
Okay.
See you in a couple weeks.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Meeting adjourned. Appreciate it.
Thanks.